Hey everyone, I'm Nick, or Nix, and I know things seem pretty scary for trans people right now, so here is a non-exhaustive list of things that both trans people and allies can do to try to make things a little bit better. Before I begin, I do want to clarify that not everything on this list is going to be accessible to everyone or applicable in every situation, and the majority of this list is going to be US focused. But I do promise you there is something on this list for everyone. The number one thing on this list that I'm going to ask that everyone do, no matter how intimidating it may seem, is to please stay informed. And I know, to trans people especially, keeping up with the news may seem incredibly hopeless, but I promise you, it is not. Yes, there are horrible, awful, terrifying things happening in the news, but there is also good trans news happening on a near daily basis. And unfortunately, many major news outlets don't do a very good job of reporting on trans news, period, but especially not in a positive light. So if you aren't actively seeking it out, it can seem like there isn't any, but I promise you, there is. At the moment, it seems like the best source of regular, dependable, and comprehensive trans news in the United States is probably Aaron Reed's newsletter, which I will link down below in addition to as many other resources as I can find. But I do want to add a quick note here and say that unfortunately Aaron does seem to have a history of questionable behavior towards trans people of color, particularly Black trans people. And I don't think I can share this resource in good faith without also including that piece of information. With that being said, I and even many of the people who personally had negative interactions with her do seem to be struggling to find a resource as in-depth and frequently updated. But by all means, please let me know in the comments if you have anything like that, and I will gladly add to or replace the links in the description. But back to the main point, if you're trans yourself, knowing what we're actually up against can help you stay safe. People who are suffering because of anti-trans violence and legislation deserve to have their stories heard. And like I said before, you'd be surprised just how often there's good news too. Support trans people in media. Buy trans people's art, watch trans people's movies, listen to trans people's music, read trans people's books. Supporting trans creators and letting them know that they have an audience helps them to continue to create. Plus, generating positive publicity for trans media helps to normalize the existence of trans people in general. Follow trans creators online, and specifically follow as wide a range of trans creators as you possibly can. Follow trans women and trans men. Follow non-binary people. Follow trans people with physical and mental disabilities. Follow trans people who are intersex. Follow trans people of color. And within that, especially follow Black and Indigenous trans people, as they make up some of the most vulnerable populations within our community and yet are consistently platformed the least. And don't just follow these people, engage with their content. Like it, comment on it, share it, DM them and tell them that you appreciate whatever it is that they're doing. And support them financially if you can so that they can continue to create. Support individual trans people who are in need of financial help. There are trans people across the entire world trying to flee abusive families, unsafe states or provinces, and even their home countries, in addition to needing access to potentially life-saving gender-affirming care like hormones, surgical procedures, and other things like binders, for example. And all of these things cost money. If you have anything financially to share, please consider giving it directly to trans people who are in need of financial assistance, especially multi-marginalized trans people. And even if you don't have any money to spare, please share any requests for financial help that you come across. Check if you have any local LGBT organizations and reach out to them. Go see what they're doing to help trans people at the moment and ask if there's anything that you can do for them. And if they aren't, see if you can organize something with them. And if there's nothing in your area, see if you can start something, even if it's incredibly small or entirely online, like a Facebook group or something. Support larger scale organizations that are helping LGBT people. Follow them online, support what they're doing, see if there's anything you can do for them. Once again, I will provide as many links as I possibly can in the description. Utilize the skills and tools that you have. If you can't provide financial support to trans people and LGBT organizations, there are still other valuable things that you can give people. If you have clothes to get rid of, see if you can donate them somewhere that provides trans people with gender-affirming clothing. If you sew or crochet or knit, maybe you can make clothes for trans people and give them away yourself. Understand legalese, see if you can help break down complex legislation into more accessible language or help trans people navigate the legal system. If you know self-defense skills, see if there's any trans people in your area that you can teach or share your knowledge with online. You can really use almost any skill or hobby to help marginalized people if you sit and brainstorm for a while. Contact your elected officials. From the most local levels of towns and cities all the way up to the top, you can call and email your elected officials. Now, what this actually accomplishes is gonna depend on a lot of things, but if your representative does something you approve of, encourage them to continue to do so. And if they're working to pass anti-trans legislation or sitting back and doing nothing about it, I mean, given American legislators' reactions to some of the other things that people have been badgering them about for months to years now, I'm not exactly sure you're going to be changing any minds, but who knows? Maybe you could, or at the very least, you might make someone's day slightly more unpleasant, and that's gotta be worth something. And again, more local levels like town governments are actually pretty likely to be impacted by whatever you're saying or doing. Go to city council meetings. Again, the most tangible change you can make is probably going to be at a local level. So try to attend some city council meetings if possible. Maybe even go with some friends and see what you can accomplish there. Protest. This is probably the most obvious thing on the list, and also likely the least accessible. But there are protests happening all over not only the United States, but the entire world right now in support of trans rights. So if that's something that is accessible to you, please do try and go. And if you do go, please remember to practice protest safety. Protect your eyes, wear masks, turn off your phones or don't bring them at all, and all the other stuff. Check with your local schools. Ask your local school district what they're doing to protect LGBT and especially trans students. And if the answer is nothing, see if you can convince them to. And I know that this is like seriously a long shot and not feasible for most people, but if you're an adult, consider seeing if you can get involved with the school board. Contact media outlets. If you see an important story about violence towards trans people or anti-trans legislation, or even a positive story, but see that it's only being covered or only being correctly covered by queer-focused news outlets, you can contact news outlets to submit suggestions, criticisms, and complaints. And don't forget about local news outlets too, like local news stations and newspapers. Stickers. Yes, seriously, you heard me. I know it probably sounds strange, but stickers. See if you can buy some stickers from trans artists or DIY some yourself and put them in places where people will actually see them. I cannot legally suggest that you deface public or private property, so I will not. But have you ever been, I don't know, I'll give an American example, putting gas in your car and seen 100 Joe Biden did this stickers all over the pump? Stickers can be highly visible, annoying to get rid of, and potentially even unforgettable depending on where they're placed and how many of them there are. So, I don't know, get creative and think of something. Make some zines about literally anything related to trans people and distribute them. Zines about trans history, statistics about trans lives, resources for trans people in your community, queer art, literally anything. Put them on bulletin boards, hand them out on campus or at community functions. Again, another one where you can get incredibly creative with both the design and execution. Same deal as zines, but maybe even less work. Find or make your own with eye-catching art and information, and maybe even include something like a link or a QR code, and then put it somewhere where people will see it. Archive things. Find a website with helpful information for trans people, archive it. See an infographic with important information, download it and print it out. See a queer history documentary on YouTube, burn it on a DVD. I am so serious. We have no idea how far the extent of purging trans-related information is going to go, and unfortunately, most major social media sites seem to be working pretty closely with the US government. So I'm not really sure what might end up happening in terms of silencing and censorship online, and that's already not great to begin with. So help us preserve and distribute our history, just in case. And if you're trans yourself, document your life. It can be kind of therapeutic to do anyway. Actually learn about trans history, in general, in your country, and even your local area if that's possible. Read books and articles, watch documentaries, seek out the stories of older trans people. Not only do I think this information is simply important to know, but it can be good to have a reminder that trans people have survived some pretty bleak circumstances before, even if we have lost a lot of people along the way. And again, it's important to remember the people that we have lost anyway. If you're cis, be vocal in your workplace, at your school, with your family. If you're cis, you have the opportunity to have difficult conversations with significantly less risk to your safety than trans people. And trans people are more empowered to stand up for themselves when they can trust that there will be people there to support them when they do. I do want to emphasize that you should always make sure that you are not accidentally outing a trans person to anyone, but if you see a teacher intentionally referring to a student as their dead name, correct them. If you're out with a family member and they make a weird comment about a trans person that you see, call them out on it. Is everyone at your job suddenly removing their pronouns from their emails? Keep yours, and ask your coworkers about their decision to pre-comply with executive orders that probably don't even affect them. Seek out friendships with trans people, ideally in real life, but even online is good if that's not possible. Lots of trans people have always struggled with feeling alone and being socially othered, but especially now. So if you can help trans people actually be less alone in the world, that would be great. And bonus, having trans friends as a trans person and being in company with people who are experiencing similar things as you can really help with your mental health and understanding of yourself. Remember that you can support trans people less directly too. The oppression of transgender people is intertwined with that of every other marginalized group too. And while I definitely don't think that you should be supporting other marginalized people out of selfishness, it should be noted that trans people are significantly more likely to be unhoused, face food insecurity, be disabled, experience violence. The list goes on. So if you can't find something specifically supporting trans people in your area and you don't have the resources to start something yourself, try to find something else to help out with. Volunteer at the local food pantry. Go back to wearing masks. Hold on. Go back to wearing masks. Did you know that roughly a quarter of trans adults in the US have long COVID? Well, you do now, and you'd best believe that my next scripted video is going to be about these things. But back to the main point. There's less obvious ways to help trans people too. And I think we should all be trying to help out our local communities wherever possible anyway. This last one is specifically for trans people, and that's to stay alive. I know, it probably sounds cheesy or whatever, but seriously, if there's nothing else you can do, just stay alive. Do whatever you've got to do it. I know things may seem awful, but there is still hope as long as we have each other. We may well continue to lose rights in the United States, but the members of our community who fought for those rights in the first place found ways to endure before them. And there are still support networks of trans people helping each other in even the most conservative of countries. People have found their own ways to access gender-affirming care like HRT, even in instances where it's difficult or illegal. And additional anti-trans legislation is only going to continue to push the limitless creativity of the trans community. So please, don't lose hope yet, and find whatever reason you can to keep going. Thank you.